about Rishi Sunak. So Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the richest MP in the House of Commons, he's worth about £200 million, has given bankers a £7.3 billion tax break very recently. So, as you all know, and as the sort of subheading shows, there's a lot of people, well, not shows, says, a lot of people in this country are really, really struggling, and bills are increasing, and it's becoming harder and harder for people to be able to afford even the basics that they should be able to afford. So there's a clip here that we have where Rishi Sunak is being interviewed, being grilled by a committee of MPs, and it's Angela Eagle, who's a Labour MP, who's talking to him. And I think the video is a little bit on the longer side, but I think it's important to watch. So let's throw it up and have a watch.
Yeah, I mean, to sum up then, you've made a political choice to plunge 1.3 million people, including 500,000 children, into absolute poverty. On the figures we have now, that is what you've chosen to do in your spring statement.
No, what I've chosen to do is ameliorate, on average, a third of the impact on living standards from forces that are clearly outside of my control, global in nature. We've come up with a package that is progressive in the way it's been designed, and crucially will not add to the inflationary pressures in a significant way, which would harm the very people that we care about and want to make sure that we do care for, and have put in place specific support to help them. Now, I totally accept you might have preferred to say, well, I would rather not cut taxes on 30 million working people.
Don't put words into my mouth.
No, but you said it's choice, right? So there's, and as the chair said, so there's a choice that people can make within a constraint of how much is a responsible amount to borrow.
What I'm trying to do,
I'm comfortable with the choices that I've made are the right ones for the country.
What I'm trying to do is tease out your choices. I don't want you to speculate on what mine might have been. The issue here is that we've got people on fixed rates of income that are going to suffer very, very badly in the next period, whatever happens in October. For example, a single person caring for their parent whose main source of income is their carer's allowance of £67 a week. They're not going to be able to accommodate a huge trebled, quadrupled energy bill, are they? You've not helped them.
Well, we've announced £9 billion worth of support in February to help people with energy bills.
Social security benefits.
Well, could I just answer the question?
By 12 billion in real terms, a minus 5% real terms cut in welfare and social security benefits doesn't seem the best way of approaching this vicious increase in the cost of living for those people on the lowest.
So, just to step back for a moment, I want to say something. I want to say that I think Rishi Sunak is quite a clever politician, and I think that he knows how he's portraying himself. He's trying to portray himself as this kind of reasonable but very, fiercely pragmatic but very competent politician. He's quite, he's sort of quite well cut. He's very sort of clean, He's not the kind of scruffy Boris Johnson, Jeremy Corbyn type sort of aesthetically. I know Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson couldn't be further from each other in every other way, but you know what I mean. But Rishi Sunak is really a fascinating political character. Let's talk about the way he tries to turn that onto a criticism of Labour and of Angela Eagle. He said, maybe you wouldn't want to cut taxes for millions of working families across Britain. He's trying to put words in the mouth, obviously, trying to say, the alternative to what he's talking about is keeping taxes higher for working people so they have even less money in their pockets. Now, it's fundamentally not true that's what Labour wants anyway. But even if it was, that doesn't answer the questions that she's asking him about his own policies. Right, and second, anyway, the Tories have raised national insurance contributions, which has affected working class people more than anyone. So I don't really understand what his argument can be there. But something else that I think probably the most important part of that is when Rishi Sunak says that they've helped with about a third of those increases in costs. The government, they're offering support for people, but they don't want to spend too much because of that could risk increasing inflationary pressures. Now, that kind of blows me away a little bit, and I'll tell you why. So, inflation obviously is a phenomenon that is it's a bad thing for the economy to have significant levels of inflation, but it's actually good to have small levels, right? I'm sure everyone watching this knows that already, but it's worth saying. What's also worth saying is that what Rishi Sunak is trying to convey to us here is that there's a choice. You can choose either high inflation whilst making sure everyone has the basic necessities they need to live, or we can have low inflation and a strong economy whilst millions of people languish in poverty and get pushed further and further and further into it. Now, even if that were true, and it's not, what kind of economy is it where if you provide the basic necessities to live to all of your people, that means housing and food and water and energy and these things, then your economy is going to go down the shitter. What kind of economy is that? He's indirectly destroying his own economic dogma and his party's own economic lies that they've been spewing for at least the last 43 years since Margaret Thatcher came to power and ruined everything. So that's I think the most important thing we can take away from what Rishi Sunak is saying there, that he's admitting that the philosophy of the Conservative Party and his personal philosophy is that you can choose between low inflation and helping people have the basics they need to survive. And this is not just like, a few thousand people, which would be bad enough. This is millions of people in the country. And he's saying, you can have one or the other. And ultimately, if you do try and help those people, inflation will get so high that it won't make a difference, and actually their standard of living will still go down anyway. So if you're organizing an economy, right, the basic stuff, the base has got to be, we want to provide healthcare, we want to provide housing, water, electricity, food, jobs. I don't know if I said housing. Energy and education, right? And obviously you want infrastructure, you want like roads and public transport, and, different buildings for various different specific industries and things like that. That's kind of the base of the economy, right? You provide people with the basic stuff that they need to live and potentially thrive. What is the fucking point of the economy? What is the fucking point of a country if it can't even do that? We're one of the wealthiest nations on earth. Billionaires in our country got exponentially richer during the pandemic while everyone else suffered. And now the Chancellor is saying, unfortunately, we've got to make tough decisions and we can't, help people and as much as ideally we'd want to. Fundamentally, he just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to. The Conservatives don't care about ordinary people. Now, this probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to anyone, considering they get funded by the very billionaires that exploit working class people all around the country and around the world. But there you go. It needs to be said. So please, if you ever hear this argument again that inflation is caused by investing in like public services and providing people with the basic services they need to survive, like energy and water and electricity and jobs, housing, healthcare, education, etc. Please, 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 just remind this person that at the end of the day, if that's how the economy works, we need a new fucking system. We need a new system because very, very few people are benefiting from that system, and it's clearly totally backwards. And it's worth mentioning before we move on to the final part of the show that there have been studies showing that bankers For every like dollar or pound a banker earns, several more dollars or pounds are destroyed further down the economic chain in the form of stress, depression, anxiety, exploitation, pollution, and various other things. And that's the same for advertising executives as well. And I encourage you all to look up those studies. We'll probably talk about them more in depth in a future episode, actually, and reference the actual studies and get some graphics up and everything. But I'm just mentioning that because the people who are getting that money, that 7.3 billion, aren't even the ones generating the wealth. The ones generating the wealth are the teachers, the ones generating the wealth are the engineers, the cleaners, the firefighters, the nurses, the doctors, the scientists, the people who lay down the roads, the people who build the bridges, the people who build the buildings, the people who run the trains, the people who are providing services and are helping the productive capacity of our country. Those are the people that create the wealth. The banks suck it from them and destroy wealth further down the economic chain. That's all most of their actions do in the financial sector.